Now the topic before us is Bitcoin decrypting its legal tender status. We have already learned the meaning of legal tender. Legal tender means any form of currency or any form of money which has been approved by the government as a medium of exchange for the purpose of payment of debts or for the purchase of goods and services. In India, we make use of currency notes and coins to purchase goods and services or to make payment of debts. These are legal tender because they have been declared by the government to be valid for the purpose of making payments, all sorts of transactions. Now we also find that cryptocurrencies are also used to make payments. Bitcoin is also a cryptocurrency. Now the question arises whether Bitcoin is also a legal tender, whether if we are living in India or in USA, what is the status of Bitcoin? Whether we can use Bitcoin to make the payment of goods and services. Suppose if I want to purchase, say, jewelry, or I want to purchase, say, a house, whether we can make the payment in Bitcoin to the seller of the house or to the car dealer or to the jewelry showroom, whether I can make the payment in Bitcoin if I am living in USA or in India or in any other country. So this is the question. Bitcoin, first, what is the meaning of Bitcoin? Bitcoin is a digital or virtual cryptocurrency. It is not controlled, issued, or backed by any central authority such as a government, financial institution, or central bank. If we are living in India or in USA, we are having with us, if we are in India, we are having with us currency notes which are in rupee. If we are living in USA, we are having in our wallet dollars. These Indian rupee, American dollars have been printed by the government authority or government itself or central bank, or that is the Federal Reserve in USA. So they have the backing. Indian rupee or the dollar in USA has the backing of the government. They are published by the central bank of the country or government of the country, and they have been declared to be legally valid for the purpose of transactions, any type of transaction, for making purchase of goods or for the purpose of making payment of debts or for availing services from someone. But in the case of Bitcoin, it is not issued by any government authority or by central bank. It is not controlled by any government authority or central bank or any financial institution. As of November 29, 2023, only 2 countries have allowed Bitcoin as a legal tender. It means that only in these 2 countries, El Salvador and Central African Republic, you can use Bitcoin to purchase goods or to make the payment of debts or to avail services. You can make the payment in Bitcoin only in these 2 countries. The government has officially recognized in these 2 countries that the Bitcoin is legally valid currency in their country. or legally valid form of money. You can use it in those countries. However, a number of other countries in the world are also considering to adopt Bitcoin as a legal tender. They are thinking, which are those countries? These countries are Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, Panama, and maybe some more countries are also considering that they should adopt Bitcoin. They are thinking on this line. So far, only two countries, El Salvador and Central African Republic, has accepted Bitcoin as legal tender. Other countries are still thinking on this line. So far as India and USA are concerned, they have not accepted Bitcoin as legal tender. It is important to note that legal tender status does not mean that Bitcoin is the only currency that can be used in a country. It means that if a particular country such as El Salvador or Central African Republic has designated Bitcoin as legal tender, it does not mean that other currency notes or coins will not legal tender in that country. They will also remain legal tender at the same time. It simply means that businesses are required to accept Bitcoin as a form of payment, that is in addition to other legal tenders or other currencies notes or the coins which are already which have already been declared by the government as legal tender. They will remain legal tender. At the same time, Bitcoin will also be accepted as legal tender for the purpose of making of payments in those countries where the government of that country has allowed the Bitcoin to be accepted as a medium of exchange for the purpose of payment of goods and for the purpose of availing services. Now the topic before us is exploring the legal tender status of checks. Firstly, we should understand the meaning of legal tender. Legal tender means currency or money which has been declared to be the valid for the purpose of making transactions or as a medium of exchange for the purpose of buying goods and services or making payment of debts. If we are living in India and we want to purchase an item, we can make the payment in currency notes or coins. If we are living in USA, we can make the payment in dollars. They are legal tender because these are backed by the government or the central bank of the country, and the persons or the businesses in the relevant country cannot refuse to accept the payment in currency notes, which may be rupee in India or in dollars in USA. These currency notes or the coins have been printed or minted by the government or the government authorities, government monetary authority. You cannot, if you are living in a that country, say in India, you cannot refuse to accept rupee. If you are living in USA, you cannot accept to refuse payment in dollars. These are legal tenders. So far as checks are concerned, checks are issued by the individuals or the businesses to make the payment of debts or for the purpose of buying goods or for availing services. Checks are issued by a one person or an organization to another person. The checks are not issued by government of the country or by the central bank of the country. So the checks are not legal tender, because these are not backed or issued by the government or the central bank of the country. Now we will read. You have before you one of the checks which has been issued by a one organization to another person. Here you will also find the difference in the words checks. In American English, the word is check, and in Indian or in UK English, the relevant word is written as this form, CHEQUES. And if we use American English, the synonym will be CHECKS. Meaning is same, purpose is same. Here you have before you one of the examples of checks. Checks is a non-legal tender money. It is not issued by the government of the country or nor by the central bank of the country. If we are living in India, it is not by government of India, and it is also not issued by Reserve Bank of India, which is the central bank in India. It is generally accepted for the purpose of making transactions while buying goods and for availing services. It may be possible that we may be making payment to the seller by way of check, but legally a person is not bound to accept it. Suppose we go to a jewelry showroom, we buy jewelry, and we ask the jewelry showroom that I will make the payment by check. The jewelry showroom may refuse to accept the check. Suppose if we want to purchase a car and we say that I will make the payment by check, the car dealer may refuse to accept the payment by check because check is not a legal tender. You cannot force any person or business organization to accept the payment by check because it is not legal tender. The person is not legally bound to accept the payment in check. However, if you make the payment in currency notes or coins, the coins are already discussed that coins are also a limited legal tender. If we make the payment by in India in currency notes of rupees, 500 rupee note or 200 rupee note, then that person cannot refuse to accept the same. But if you make the payment by check, that person may or may not accept the same. If you are having relationship with that car dealer, it may be possible that the car dealer or the jewelry showroom may accept the check. Further, postal orders, bank drafts are also seen as being non-legal tenders and accepted only at the option of the credit lender or seller. That is, seller may or may not accept the payment in postal order of bank drafts because these are also non-legal tender. The person is not legally bound to accept the same because bank drafts are issued by commercial banks, postal orders are issued by post offices. They are not issued by the government of the country or by the central bank of the country. The checks are also known as optional money because it does not have legal backing and their acceptance is optional, that is at the will of the seller or the dealer. He may or may not accept the payment by way of checks. Next is there a difference between legal tender and other forms of money? The answer is yes. Legal tender is a specific form of money that must be accepted for transactions by law. That is, the government has declared that you cannot accept a particular currency or money as a medium of exchange. You have to accept the same If you're selling something, you have to accept the payment in that currency which has been approved by the government as a medium of exchange for the purpose of transactions. Other forms of money, such as checks, may be accepted based on the mutual agreement between parties. That is, if both the parties know each other, the seller may accept the same, but the check is not a legal tender. Now the question is, which of the following is a legal tender money? Checks. Checks are issued by an individual or a business organization. These are not backed or issued by the government or the central bank. Demand drafts are not issued by the government. These are issued by the commercial banks. Postal orders are also not issued by the government or central bank. In case of India, RBI, Reserve Bank of India, does not issue postal orders. So it is not a legal tender money. All these. So the currency notes which we have in our wallet in the form of 10 rupee, 100 rupee, 200 rupee, or 500 rupee currency notes, these are legal tender money because these have the backing of government or the central bank of the country, and you can purchase goods and you can use currency notes for the purpose of making payment of debts or for the purpose of availing services. Next is, which of the following statements is false? Fixed deposits are not legal tender. It is correct because fixed deposits are issued by commercial banks. So these are not legal tender. Okay, it is correct. But we have to find the statement which is false. Checks and postal orders are not legal tender. Okay, it is also correct. Checks are issued by commercial banks. Postal orders are issued by the post offices. These are also not legal tender because these are not issued by the government or Reserve Bank or the central bank of the country. Currency notes issued by the government are not legal tender. This is false. This is the answer. This statement is wrong because currency notes issued by the government are legal tender. You can purchase goods and avail services with the help of currency notes. The currency notes have been declared to be legally valid for the purpose of transactions or for the purpose of making goods, for the purpose of making payment in respect of goods and services, and for making payment in respect of debts. Thanks for watching. If you like our course, please spare some time to give a star rating to our course.